Hello, welcome back. I am very excited. We have a mid-season preview to break down today in this video. I'm just going to get started. We're going to jump in really quickly. Oh, we're talking about The Bachelorette. I should have said that first. But I'm sure I'll put it in the title so you'll know what we're doing. Okay. This is a very bad intro, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going with it. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to break down the new mid-season preview, and we have a lot to get through, and I'm really excited. I think a couple of the predictions that I made early on with the pre-season previews were confirmed. A couple things I think are now kind of changing. We're starting to get a better picture of what's going to go down at the end of the season, so I'm very excited. So let's go ahead and get started. But before we go, don't forget, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. You know the drill. All right, let's go. Okay, alrighty, let's get started. So episode 5 just aired this week, which is the 4th week of dating in this season of The Bachelorette. And the producers blessed us with an extended mid-season preview. So we are down to the top 12 men in Katie's season, and we have a lot of juicy details to get through. So I've been going over this preview, and let's just talk about what looks like is going to happen and kind of where we stand in terms of predictions for the rest of the season. Because I think my thoughts are changing. They're definitely changing. So let's go ahead and get started.
Petal by petal, layer by layer, this rose is blossoming. Something special is in the air. Where there is she, so is he.
So right off the bat, we have Katie on a number of romantic dates. I think it's really interesting that we have Blake, Greg, Andrew, and Justin. I do think it's really interesting they do start with the second Blake one-on-one date. So we have seen this image before of Katie and Blake in front of this kind of bonfire. And I originally thought that this was going to be the same date as the roll in the hay date that I called it from before the pre-season preview. But now we know that actually took place on their horseback riding date, which happened in the last episode. So we know that this is actually a date that's upcoming. I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of a lot of Katie's outfits today. She seems to wear a lot of tan plaid. So it was kind of difficult to distinguish between which jacket she's wearing. But since we already saw the first one-on-one date and we know that this bonfire thingy didn't happen, we can assume that Blake is getting a second one-on-one date, which is very interesting. Next we see Greg and Katie. We've seen this shot in a number of the previews before. They're on a tandem bicycle. This definitely looks like a second one-on-one date or potentially a hometown date. Because this is the same date with the gum wall and also with the kissing in the rain because they're wearing the same outfit. So we've seen a lot of images from this date before. Next we have Katie and Andrew. This I already kind of sleuthed out and I think looks like it's probably a cocktail party. Either after a group date or potentially a rose ceremony cocktail party. I suspect probably a rose ceremony cocktail party. Usually those cocktail parties, especially when it gets closer to the end, that's when the producers allow the contestants to kind of set up something like what we see Andrew surprising Katie. And it's obviously not in this shot as much, but in the preseason preview, you could really tell that Andrew was surprising Katie, that he's recreating their first date, which is adorable. She looks wonderstruck and just so happy. And then next we see Justin and Katie on a one-on-one date. So this one we haven't seen yet. We haven't actually seen this date take place, but we do know that Justin is getting a one-on-one date, which is really interesting. We're getting kind of close to the end, and so I'm wondering if potentially this could be Justin's fantasy suite date, the daytime portion of fantasy suites, just because we do know, and I don't believe there is later, we'll talk about it, but we know that Justin's getting a second, or his first one-on-one date with Katie, and it's a photo shoot with Franco Lacosta, and I'm assuming, my suspicions are that it's going to be in episode 6, because we just saw Franco Lacosta co-host that, Bachelorette Bash Ball date with Wells Adams in episode 5. And so I'm assuming if he's being brought on to the show in order to pay his like fees and the shooting, they're going to try to shoot him out as quickly as possible. Like, I don't think they would bring him on for one episode, send him away for a few episodes, and then bring him back and like you have to re-quarantine and all that stuff. And that's just not, in terms of shooting schedules, whenever you bring guest stars or actors or any talent into film, you want to try to shoot them out in as few days as possible. So we already know that they filmed the group date on one day. Probably the rose ceremony was a day later. And so I'm assuming Justin's probably going to get the first one on one date, even though we know that they could shoot things out of order. But just in terms of thinking of how television and film scheduling, I've never taken an actual television scheduling class, but in my pre-production film classes, the principles are essentially the same. In other scheduling, you try to schedule actors or talent on as few days as possible because you don't have to continue to pay for them for extended periods of time. You want to shoot, it's called shooting someone out. You shoot them out as quickly as possible so then they can go home. You don't have to continue to pay them. So that's why I am assuming that Justin's one-on-one date with Franco Lacosta, it's going to be the photo shoot date, is going to be coming up next week. So that's what I'm guessing. We will see if that actually happens. Yeah, so we've seen all of this footage before. This is nothing new.
I love you.
They made sure to capture the special moments they shared.
When I'm with you, everything else fades.
I'm so lucky to have you.
You make me happy every day.
We see Mike and Katie. They're embracing. This looks like the one-on-one date that I kind of suspected that Mike was going to get before, because they're both wearing like white outfits. First we get the shot of them embracing, which is new, and then we get the shot of them kind of like lying down and his arm around her. Looks a little awkward. I'm really not going to lie. The way Katie is kind of like patting his hand looks awkward. Looks like a woman who's not really enjoying her time with this man all that much. I don't know what the date is. I feel like it's probably some kind of like, are we going to have a spiritual connection kind of thing? Because, probably playing up the virgin storyline. It looks like Katie's feeling maybe a little uncomfortable with the patting of the hand. Just looks weird. But anyways, we have seen that shot before. It's really interesting. They put in the same voiceover of Katie whispering, "I love you," but this time with Mike.
I love you.
But in the preseason preview, they did this over Katie embracing Andrew S.
I love you.
So again, it's like it doesn't really mean anything. I suspect, and we'll actually come back to this later, I'm fairly certain that she's not saying "I love you" to Mike P. But he does get a one-on-one date, so we know he's going to stick around for at least a couple of episodes. We sleuthed this out before. This is obviously Blake from that Say Anything night. This is a repeat shot. Next, we have another shot we've seen before. This is Greg and Katie kissing in the rain from their tandem bicycle date. And then we have Katie and Connor. Okay, and then again, we have two more quick shots that we've seen before. This is Justin and Katie. And then we have scene 10. This is a shot of Katie saying, "You make me happy every day." She's wearing a black off-the-shoulder dress, but then look at the earrings. The earrings are black, dangly earrings. They're kind of like geometric in shape, but then they have the little pave diamonds kind of around the side. Now, the first time I saw this, I didn't really think too much about it and couldn't really figure out who it was, but after looking back at all of the past previews, you can actually tell she's saying this to Greg because of those earrings. So in the shot, which there's a really, really interesting theory that my friends told me about, that people think that after Greg and Katie have this like giant blow up and they fight and they break up, and we'll see more about that later in this trailer too, that Greg then comes back, and then this nighttime scene of them running out into the rain, people are thinking that he comes back and then this is actually a final rose ceremony. I don't think so, because of this shot of Katie saying, "You make me happy every day." That seems like a nighttime portion of the date where they're sitting down at a table. Like, it looks like she's sitting and speaking to him, and she has these earrings, and then it starts to rain and they like run out and kiss in the rain and have their like romantic, it's not really, I always, we're just do a top countdown of like romantic rain kisses. There's a lot of those. When I think of like kissing in the rain, I always think of like, not the Spider-Man kiss in the rain. I think of Seth and Summer from the OC and their upside down Spider-Man rain kiss, but that's just because I love the OC so much. But a lot of people are calling this like the Notebook scene. And you can see, if you really like zoom in, that Katie's wearing those same black earrings. So I think this is the nighttime portion of probably that tandem bicycle date. Or maybe a fantasy suite date, because like the tandem bicycle feels like maybe a hometown, but we know that Greg is sticking around for a while. Next, we have another new shot of Blake and Katie. This is from that same Say Anything night. You can tell he's wearing the black sweatshirt, black hoodie, and Katie's wearing that dusty rose hoodie that we talked about in the last preview breakdown, which if you haven't checked it out, I'll go ahead and link it up there and also in the description box. But this is the same night. It's just a different shot. It's a different location. So it looks like it's out in some of the common areas of the hotel. And then during this shot, we start to get a voiceover of Blake talking about Katie.
Katie is the one, and nothing's gonna come between us.
So we actually have 3 quick shots. We have that first shot of Blake and Katie in the Say Anything moment. Then we have a second shot of Blake and Katie at a cocktail party. And then we get the in the moment interview with Blake where he finishes the line. So we know that that second shot of Blake and Katie kissing is from a cocktail party because that's the same pink dress with pink earrings that Katie is wearing in the shot with Andrew S. when he surprises her with that recreation of their first one-on-one date. It also is the same night that Michael is talking to Katie and says, you know, falling in love is a wonderful thing and I'm so happy it's with you. You can see the strap of her dress and the earrings, so you know that that's the same night. So either Blake, Andrew, and Michael are all in the same cocktail party, or Blake, Andrew, and Michael are all sticking around to at least, you know, another rose ceremony or so down the line. Then we get a really interesting shot. We get a shot of it cuts to a black like SUV driving down a dirt road. Now, this is kind of the transition from the romantic portion of the trailer to a more dramatic portion of the trailer. However, this looks really familiar. It looks not familiar, but it looks similar to some of the shots you see in past trailers or in past seasons of people heading to a final rose ceremony. Of people, you know, getting in cars, driving there. It's always dramatic. They cut between the contestant and the bachelor or the bachelorette waiting for them as they arrive. So this looks like it could be our first look at a final rose ceremony, because it's really interesting in these trailers so far. We have not seen a final rose ceremony. Like we just haven't seen that, and we know from past seasons, like with last season with Matt James, they will like even fake like a final rose ceremony. Like there were shots of like him walking in the woods. It wasn't actually the final rose ceremony. It was a setup shot that was just there to look like the final rose ceremony, and then they had other shots of the actual final rose ceremony. So like we know that they will do that, but we haven't seen any of that from this season yet, which is really, really interesting. So I think this is something to keep an eye out for moving forward. It doesn't necessarily mean anything right now, but I think we should look for it.
Holy the last thing I ever expected was you.
So that, like I said, that's the transition between the romantic portion of the trailer to the drama portion of the trailer, which is basically the entire rest of the trailer. And so we have a close-up of Michael knocking on a door. Now, we know that this is Michael because like I said in my past preview breakdown, we know that Michael is going to be self-eliminating coming up. Cut to the inside of Katie's hotel room. She's going to the door. She's wearing kind of like a olive green, dusty green kind of hoodie. And then she opens the door and a man is standing there, but he's wearing kind of this like taupey sweater. Now, if you look later in the trailer, we recognize this as Brendan from this shot, in which he's sitting in looks like a hotel room with his face in his hands, obviously upset. So it looks like he goes to talk to Katie and then things don't turn out well. And then we cut to her again in her Say Anything outfit, that pink sweatshirt. At first watch, and I've watched this trailer a number of times, but the first time I watched it, I assumed that she was talking to Blake. However, if you really think about it, she did see him before. So, because it looks like she's sitting down on a couch. You can tell because she's kind of at like shoulder height level with like a table in the background. So you can tell she's sitting like on a couch or on a chair or something. But the whole point of like Blake's say anything moment was to do the say anything. Like she's in her room, she hears music, she goes out on the balcony, and he's standing there. That's when he surprises her. So then after that happens, obviously she's going to say like, hey, come up. And then when she goes to open the door and be like, I didn't expect to see you, doesn't make sense. Like maybe she didn't expect to see him in that say anything moment, but it doesn't make sense that she'd be saying it in the hotel room sitting like on a couch. So this is a scene that's really important to keep in mind as we move forward. This will come back into play.
It suddenly just feels so much realer and scarier.
Oh, gosh.
What are you actually doing here?
So then it cuts to a scene with all of the guys. Well, not all of the guys. If you count the men, there actually are 11 men there. So everyone is there except for Greg. So you can see in this shot, Andrew S., Connor, Brendan, Mike, Aaron, James, Trey, Blake, Justin, and Michael. But you can only see Michael for like a second. Oh, and so in this shot, I guess technically Greg and Hunter are missing, but then in the very next shot, you see Hunter running to embrace Connor. Because in the first shot, you see Connor, he's staying there, he's wearing a dark blue suit, and then all of the other guys are in kind of just like loungewear hanging around the house, and he's embracing Brendan. And then in the very next shot, you see Connor, again, same outfit, you see Andrew S. in the background, same black t-shirt he's wearing in the immediately previous shot, and you see Hunter running up to give Connor a hug. So you've seen 11 out of the 12 men, all except for Greg, which is really interesting. Now, again, I think this shot is going to be important, and we will come back to it later. So we're going to put a pin in it. We're going to remember this shot because we're going to talk about it later. And then we see another shot with Tayshia. She's outside. She says, what are you actually doing here? We don't have any context or any idea who she's actually talking to. My guess from later in the trailer, it's probably going to be either Blake or maybe Greg, because it looks like they're the two that are kind of struggling the most with their feelings. So next we have a whole like little mini Greg sequence.
You want to feel like you're the only one, but you're not. This whole thing is just tearing me apart.
Who cares about the rose or who's getting sent home this week? If it's not real, it's not real.
It starts with Greg opening the blind in his hotel room. Then we have him out on a balcony, kind of leaning over, not quite going full Mesnick yet, but his resting sad face is on full display. So then you hear voiceover of Greg saying, you want to feel like you're the only one, but you're not. And then it cuts to Blake wearing a blue t-shirt. And then it cuts to Greg in that same black t-shirt that we saw with him in his hotel room of opening the blinds, where he says, this whole thing is tearing me apart. And I think that this is Overnights. I think this is Overnights. Because it's just the two men, it's just Blake and Greg that we see in this shot. You know, I even have maybe a little bit of a thought that Katie could potentially take 4 men into Overnights, kind of the way that Hannah Brown did with her season, that she couldn't make the elimination to get down to 3. Well, Luke P brought himself back, but Hannah Brown ended up taking 4 men into Overnights. But I think it looks like this could potentially be an overnight. And I think this might give us a clue about what Greg is going through. In episode 5, so last week's episode, they did talk to Greg, and he started to kind of open up about how difficult this whole experience is for him. And so I kind of feel like the fight that Greg and Katie are eventually going to have is him opening up and expressing his concerns and possibly his doubts about this entire process. This is just a speculation. It's just a theory. Oh, sorry. It's just a theory, you guys. Sorry, old school YouTube. Super canceled right now. Anyways, it is just a theory, but I feel like Greg is going to probably have some problems, possibly coming to a head around fantasy suites. Maybe his jealousy, maybe his insecurities get the best of him, and that's what leads to the huge blow up that Katie and Greg have. So I wonder if he maybe questions some of her choices or questions her taking certain guys into fantasy suites, or maybe even asks about what happens in fantasy suites, and that does not go down well. Possibly, because it sounds like they're building to Greg having some major jealousy or major insecurities and difficulties accepting this whole process. That's what it kind of seemed like to me from this edit, and then some of the things that we saw last week as well from Greg. So that's kind of where I feel like we're going here.
Real.
I would hate to see you end up with the wrong person.
Next, we have Katie in her hotel room. She's wearing jeans and like a cropped white t-shirt, and she's rushing towards the door past a bunch of cameramen. And we just see the back of her, so we don't actually see her lips moving. So I don't think that she's saying this in that moment. I think they just put the voiceover in, but she's rushing out of her hotel room, rushing past the cameraman, and then I think this looks like the same outfit that she's wearing when she runs down the hall and runs to Andrew S. and then jumps in his arm. So something is happening there. I don't know. It doesn't feel like someone who, if you just sent someone home, that you would then immediately try to run after them, but potentially. I don't know. Something is definitely going down here. But they try to make it look like Katie's being sick, but I don't think that's actually true. Next, we have a new shot of James at a rose ceremony, and it looks like he's also going to be stepping up into a more villain edit. So it looks like maybe the turtleneck and jacket was from a cocktail party, and then he makes it to at least one more rose ceremony, or potentially he could be the other guy who goes on the 2-on-1 date with Hunter. Okay, so next we have the drama continues, but it kind of changes a little bit more to like emotional drama.
My son's the thing I love most.
I miss you like crazy, buddy.
Maybe Daddy don't want to see me.
It just tore me apart. I can't focus on anything else.
We see Michael now on a balcony, and he almost goes full Mesnick with So Sad, and he is wearing his blue jacket and his white collared shirt that we sleuthed out in the last preseason preview. This is the outfit he's wearing when he self-eliminates. We have a voiceover of Michael saying, "My son is the thing I love the most." Then we have Michael at a different time on the phone with his son, and then this, you can tell it's like edited for like maximum like emotional impact, and him saying, "Oh, I missed you so much" on the phone, and then his son, just in a complete break your heart moment, says, "Maybe Daddy doesn't want to see me." Oh my goodness. I mean, I don't have children and I don't really like kids, but I can imagine as a parent that would be like the hardest thing possible that you could ever hear. Like, that's just so sad and like really heartbreaking. So I think this gives backstory and context to why Michael is going to self-eliminate. I initially thought, well, I always knew that he was going to be leaving because of his son. I thought perhaps it was that he wasn't ready to introduce Katie to his son during hometowns, or he just wasn't really emotionally ready to continue on with this relationship. But it sounds like it's just becoming too difficult for him to be separated from his son, which is at least kind of the storyline that we're getting right now with Michael. Then we get the confirmation that the man that we sleuthed out in the preseason preview is Michael, because we see Michael holding Katie's hands, and it's a close-up of Michael saying, "I can't focus on anything else." So this is obviously him being like, "I need to be home with my son." And he's wearing blue jacket, white collared shirt. So that was something we got right in the last like breakdown, which is kind of cool.
I'm not in love right now.
What if somebody else has already said it and she's said it back? What are you waiting for?
Next, we have Blake with Katie at a cocktail party. We know it's the cocktail party because she's wearing that same sparkly dress as we talked about before. And Blake says, "I'm not in love right now." And then it cuts to a close-up of Katie wearing that same dress. So we actually know, because we have seen a shot of Blake and Katie together on that night in the same location. We know Blake's talking to her, and then we have a close-up of Katie's reaction shot. Then we have really like big, maybe it's not so shocking because I did suspect that Blake was going to make it to the final four, but we now have hard, concrete proof that Blake makes it to the final four and gets a hometown because we see Blake's sister. And we know it's Blake's sister. I feel a little creepy having done this, but it's social media. You put it out there for the public, so yeah, I'm going to go creep on your Instagram. But we actually see two shots of Blake with his sister. So it looks like he has two siblings, a brother and a sister. And we can see his sister in two Instagram shots with Blake. And then we see the same woman. It's obviously the same woman. She looks the same. She's Blake's sister. It makes sense that she'd be there for a hometown date. And she says, what if somebody already said it? AKA, obviously, I love you is what it is. What if somebody already said, I love you? Because we also have Blake earlier, I mean, just like seconds before, saying, I'm not in love right now. And so then the sister cuts to saying, what if somebody already said it? And then she said it back, and it cuts to Blake. A close-up of Blake looks like the same night as the hometown. Looks like the same hometown night just because of the lighting and the location. Looks like they're kind of outside with kind of like, looks like kind of mood lighting, maybe sitting around a fire pit. Then we have a close-up of Blake in his blue like sweatshirt in like, you know, the house. And the voiceover with the sister saying, what are you waiting for? So this is obviously an interesting storyline that I think is developing for Blake, because when Tayshia talked to Katie initially and said, this man that I know wants to come into the house, he's serious, he's here for the right reasons, and I know he'll be willing to like get down on one knee at the end of this. But it sounds like potentially Blake is struggling a little bit more than Tayshia kind of let Katie know, that she informed Katie initially that Blake was, because it sounds like he's struggling to kind of get to those feelings of love, maybe just because he started later in the process than some of the other men. Who knows exactly? But this is a pretty common storyline, especially around the overnight, the fantasy suite, the hometown dates, when people start saying, I'm falling in love with you, and then eventually I am in love with you. I'm not just falling, I'm in love. And there's always a couple contestants who are struggling with like whether or not they're actually there yet with their emotions or their feelings, and if they can say, you know, I love you, or I'm falling in love, or something. It sounds like that's kind of what's developing with Blake right now as well.
I'm just really nervous. I don't even know if I could do this.
I am done. I am done. Someone book my flight home. Like, how am I supposed to move forward with any of this?
Next, we have a couple more shots of some of the like main contenders. We have a shot of Andrew in his tan ribbed turtleneck sweater. So it's really hard to figure out exactly where this is taking place. Then we have another shot of Justin in an outfit we've not seen before. He's wearing like a mustard yellow jacket. He's in an official interview. Next, we have the shot we've seen a lot of Katie. I'm done. Someone like booked my flight home, and then slamming the bedroom door closed. Then we have an interesting shot that we've not gotten before. This is actually a shot of Caitlyn, and it looks like she's sitting outside of a bathroom door. Now, the first time I watched this trailer, I assumed this was Katie, but then as I looked at it again, at the very, very end of the scene, she kind of moves her head back, and you can kind of see a little more of her profile, and you can tell that it's definitely Caitlyn, because there's also some voiceover of Katie during this shot, and it sounds very echoey. So it sounds like the voiceover, the audio is coming from within the bathroom. So this potentially could be after the Greg breakup, when, you know, especially because it's coming in this trailer right on the heels of that scene of her saying, I'm done, someone booked my flight home. And then here she's locked herself in a bathroom, and she's like, how am I supposed to move forward with any of this? Obviously, Caitlyn sent Caitlyn in to try to talk to her and reason with her and maybe share her past experiences being the Bachelorette. Who knows? But I think it's a really interesting shot. I don't know where it comes in like the whole storyline for the rest of the season, but it's very, very interesting.
All I'm looking for is to find my person. And it's very possible that my person just left.
Oh, and then here is back all the way. We're back to Mike P. We see a shot of Katie. She is crying outside. She has a white shirt. It looks kind of ribbed, and then there's possibly like a little bit of a hood on it. And this is the outfit that looks like she's wearing earlier in the trailer when she and Mike P are embracing. And then it immediately cuts to Mike. He's walking away from Katie. He's also wearing a white shirt. And then you see Katie in the background wearing white shorts and kind of like a white shirt. And neither of them look very happy. Like, neither of them look particularly happy in this moment. And then because we had Katie crying wearing that same outfit just before this, I think this is Mike's one-on-one date that does not go well, and she decides to send him home while on that date. Now, how far Mike goes is kind of questionable, and I think it could potentially be right before hometowns. So I think there's going to be a two-on-one coming up, just because you see Hunter in two more kind of fancy outfits or like, you know, cocktail party, rose ceremony type outfits. So I think he sticks around through the next rose ceremony, and then I think the 2-on-1 is going to happen. In last week's preview, we did see Mike P on another 1-on-1 date that we haven't seen yet. So I think he sticks around another episode. And then usually right before hometowns, they tend to break it down so that there's like 3 1-on-1 dates and then 1 group date. So there's usually like it's 6 and then it goes down to 4 for the hometowns. And so there's like the 3 1-on-1 dates, and they don't have roses on those dates, and there's only 1 rose up for grabs during the group date. And so I'm thinking that possibly Mike gets one of those 1-on-1 dates right before hometowns, and Katie just feels like their connection is not strong enough to move forward with him at that point, and she sends him home. That's my prediction with what's going to happen with Michael. No, with Mike. Not Michael, Mike P. Michael P. Whatever.
And I just don't know what to believe in anymore. I feel like I'm at a breaking point.
Then we have a shot with Katie, Caitlin, and Tayshia listening to Katie, and then we can tell this is also Katie's hotel room. You can tell from the couch, it's kind of this like orangey colored material. Then we have a reverse shot, and we can tell this is a reverse shot because you can kind of see people in the background. You can tell from the location that it's also Katie's hotel room. But it's a reverse shot to Katie, and she says, I feel like I'm at a breaking point, or I feel like I'm at my breaking point. It's just a traditional reverse shot, and you can tell because you still see a little bit of Caitlin and Tayshia in that shot.
So confused.
Andrew, I'm losing you. I'm losing my mind here.
Can I leave? Just for a moment.
Then we have an interesting shot of Greg. He's wearing a black, like button-up jacket and a white, like hood. And he's outside at night, and he says, I'm so confused. Now, this is really, really important, and we're definitely going to come back to this. Then we have Greg in an interview wearing that same black jacket and like white hoodie where he's like saying, can I leave? Like he's obviously very upset. Now I think that Katie, when she's wearing that dark blue sweater and Greg is wearing that green, like army green, olive green jacket, I think they have a huge fight, a huge blow up. They both go their separate ways. Katie is maybe like locked in her bedroom or in her bathroom crying. That's when they send in Caitlin to talk to her. Greg is out there. And then I think later that night, Greg decides to leave. I think Greg potentially sends himself home. And this is him in his like going home outfit with this jacket, this white hoodie. Because I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit because we've seen the shot before and I just didn't take the time to lighten it or try to investigate it. But there's a shot of Katie and a guy in an extremely backlit dark room. So the producers have again, kind of like with that Blake and Katie kissing scene, tried to hide the image of who this man is. But I did kind of run this through my video editor. It was really hard because this was so dark. This was such a dark scene. And the guy kind of lifts his arm and like pushes his hair back. And when he does that, you can see the edge of his jacket kind of lift up and you can see a couple buttonholes. Also, you can kind of see when I lighten the photo, you can see that the hair looks a little more full and kind of like Greg's hairstyle. And then it looks like there's like a band of a lighter color kind of like around his like neck area. So it looks like he's wearing that black jacket and then white hoodie underneath it, because when you lighten it, the contrast, there's like dark mass for head, dark mass for shoulder, but there's kind of like a lighter band right here, which I'm assuming is probably the hoodie hood. So it looks like he's outside, it's nighttime, he's saying, I'm so confused. He's in an interview and he's really, really upset. And then he goes to talk to Katie, and I think that is the actual breakup. The daytime portion where Katie's like, I'm losing you, I'm losing my mind, I'm done, just book my flight home. Greg is like, he's like storming off, to the pool. That I think is the big fight, but I don't think that's the end. I don't think that's like the actual end breakup of their relationship. I think that comes later in this shot. That's my prediction for that. Even though I think Greg is getting such a Bachelor edit early on, I think the fact that he so doesn't want to be filmed during his like most emotional moments here outside by the pool, and also where he's like, I just want to leave in that interview, makes me think they're not going to pick him to be the Bachelor, because in order to be the lead, you have to be willing to be filmed at your rawest, most emotional moments. And it doesn't feel like from a couple of these shots that Greg is really willing to play that reality TV game with his emotions. But anyways, that's my prediction that Greg is not going to be the Bachelor. We'll see.
I feel like I'm going
Are you
through the
serious?
motions.
I honestly don't know if he'll recover if he doesn't.
So that's kind of my predictions of where we stand with Greg. Now, let's go ahead and talk about, remember when I said before, let's put a pin in that and come back to what's going on with Connor? This is where I think we actually see what's happening. So this is a new shot that we've never seen before. It's Connor and Katie. Katie is wearing that same rose-colored hoodie as she has with Blake in that Say Anything moment. But Connor is wearing a blue suit. I think this is the same blue suit he's wearing when he's embracing all of the guys in that shot that I said, remember that, it's going to come back to us later. And then immediately following this scene, we have another shot with Connor. He's wearing a blue suit, a black shirt, and he's in an interview. He's obviously been crying, and he says, it's heartbreaking. So I initially thought that Connor was cut from the show, that Katie decided to not continue with the journey with Connor, that she decided to end it. And before they had their nighttime portion of the date, she decided to end things. I don't actually think that that's the case. I think that Connor is actually going to be sending himself home as well. And I think this is all going to happen next episode, in episode 6. Because, like I mentioned before, when all of the men are embracing Connor between the two shots, you see 11 out of the 12 men. Now, remember when I said before there was that shot of Katie in her rose-colored pink hoodie saying, you're the last person I ever suspected, and I thought, oh, initially that's Blake coming to her room. I think this is actually when Connor B goes to Katie's room to self-eliminate. Because we have a shot of her here looking kind of happy, saying, oh, you're the last person I ever expected, because she was probably in her room to get ready to go to the nighttime portion of the date. And Connor comes to her room and says that he's leaving. I think. I think this is the shot. I think that's what happens. And then he goes back and tells the men that he is leaving the show as well. Or maybe he actually gets some bad news. Possibly, because he's dressed in a suit like he was ready to go on the nighttime portion of the date. And potentially between the daytime portion of the date, which sounds like it went well because he's there talking about how when I'm with you, everything else fades. That sounds like a positive thing to say. Maybe he gets some bad news and needs to leave immediately. And then that's possibly why all of the men are embracing him and just seem so shaken up by what happened. And then we see Katie being really upset, where she's, leaning out against the wall and seems kind of sad. And then I think that's why Blake goes to her room with the Say Anything to try to cheer her up after Connor left. That's what I think. I don't think he's just leaving because he doesn't feel a connection with Katie. I think he's forced to leave because something happened. And I also think that something happened, or he's choosing to leave on his own, because if he was just on the nighttime portion of the date with Katie, she chose to not give him a rose, there'd be a shot of, a producer or a PA or someone on set, a crew member, going into the house and taking his suitcase out while the other guys watch on, being like, oh, he didn't get a rose, and he is just gone. You don't really see shots of contestants like embracing or saying goodbye to other people in the house if they're not either self-eliminating or something happened and they had to leave the show. And like Katie mentioned in the last episode, that she was glad that Michael was well enough, because if he leaves the bubble, he can't come back. Because there have been past seasons. I think the last time it happened was on Colton's season, and I can't remember the contestant's name, but there was a woman on Colton's season whose, I think it was her mother or a family member, was sick. She had to remove herself from the show, but then she came back and joined the house like a few weeks later after the emergency was over. But like Katie mentioned, and she made a point to mention it in episode 5, which makes me think it's going to come back around. It's foreshadowing to episode 6 that if you leave the bubble, you can't come back. So I think Connor is leaving the bubble and not able to come back, which, yeah.
I feel like I'm going through the motions.
I honestly don't know if she'll recover if he doesn't propose.
Then we have another interview with Blake where he says, I feel like I'm going through the motions. This is, I think, again, to that storyline of him not sure if he can get there or feel like he's falling in love with Katie. Then here's the second shot that I mentioned of Hunter in another kind of like date outfit, cocktail party outfit. So he stays around for at least, I think, one more rose ceremony in order to be the most probable person to be on a 2-on-1. Then during this shot, we actually have a voiceover of a woman stating, I honestly don't know if she'll recover if he doesn't propose. And this is kind of like a huge, kind of bombshell is quite right, but this feels like final two meet Katie's family. Katie doesn't have any pictures of her family members on her Instagram. I was this close to doing a reverse image search on this woman's face, and I realized that is just so creepy. I'm not going to do that. So I don't know who this woman is, but just from what she's saying, where she says, I don't know if she'll recover if he doesn't propose, this sounds very similar to what other family members would say. And it seems like this just feels like families sitting around gossiping about one of the final two men. So I feel like this is, again, leading up to that Blake storyline of him not knowing if he can get there. So I think that's bringing back in that doubt, that question of, is Blake going to be able to actually get there? Is he going to be able to make that final leap and propose? That's what I'm thinking. So that's like the biggest change, is that now Blake is in my final two, which I didn't see that happening before, but that was all before we'd seen him interact with Katie at all. So I think that's really, that's like one of the biggest bombshells.
I feel like I'm in a nightmare.
I'm like shaking. I don't even know what to say.
This is more evidence of Connor leaving, and Katie is in an interview wearing that rose hoodie. She looks very upset, and she says, I'm shaking. I don't even know what to say. If she was choosing to send him home, she would say, I just didn't feel like the connection was strong enough. I have stronger connections in the house. You know, something along those lines. If she would have justification if she was the one making the decision to remove Connor.
I have no words for you right now.
Oh, this is the really interesting scene. This is the really, really interesting shot that we have not necessarily, I don't know that we've seen this before. I think it's new. This is another shot of Katie in that dark blue sweater that she's wearing during her fight with Greg. And she looks extremely upset, and Katie says, I honestly have no words for you right now, which to me signals that someone said something to Katie that was potentially distasteful to her. That maybe this is where Blake is sort of giving her an ultimatum, and she doesn't know how to respond. She feels offended, she feels angry, and they're kind of at like an impasse.
If you're not ready for this, I feel like you just need to say goodbye.
Then we have this shot of Tayshia that we've seen before, and then we have a reverse shot of Blake looking very upset, while the voiceover of Tayshia continues, saying that, you know, I honestly feel like you need to say goodbye. Now, it looks like this is in the same location. From the background with Tayshia, you can see there's like a tan wall with a red stripe. You can also see a lantern, which looks very similar to the wall and the lantern in the background of the shot with Blake. However, it's all shot in a bubble. So I tend to not put as much weight on these locations in this environment as you would in a traditional season where people are moving around and you're in different locations in different countries, you know, throughout the entire show. But because it's all filmed on this one resort, things are going to look similar. Just based on the fact that the storyline for Blake moving forward looks like the fact that he's having trouble getting to the point where he's ready to propose or ready to say that he's in love with Katie, and also just based on the fact that Tayshia and Blake do know each other and have a pre-existing relationship. He probably feels more comfortable talking to Tayshia as opposed to talking to Caitlin. So I think there's a very high probability that Tayshia is talking to Blake, but I don't think you can 100% confirm that she's talking to Blake in this instant.
I'm truly here just to fall in love. And if I walk away without that, then it was all for nothing.
The drama continues next week on The Bachelorette.
So what do we actually know from this trailer? I think this trailer basically has shown us 4 things. I think it has confirmed, without a doubt, 100%, Michael A. is going to be self-removing himself because of his son. 2, I think it has confirmed that Blake is making it to hometowns. I mean, 100% confirmed. Blake is getting a hometown. And then I think this trailer also adds a lot of credence to the theories that we talked about before of Katie and Greg going through a very traumatic fight and then I think eventual breakup. And I think this trailer and the extra footage we saw has kind of confirmed that. Other things that I think has possibly been shown in this trailer is that I think my final rose pick of Justin is off. Now this trailer, it does feature Justin, but he's not featured prominently, which I think means he's going to continue. And there's a couple things. One, the producers could be keeping Justin kind of hidden intentionally, because both Justin and Andrew are fairly hidden in this trailer. They are around, they are shown, but they're not featured the way that Greg and Blake are. Also, Justin's edit in the show is just not picking up. I'm not seeing a winner's edit for Justin really start to unfold. He's pretty under the radar or middle of the road for these episodes, and I think in order for him to be a viable contender for that final rose, you need to start seeing his complex personality develop. You need to start seeing this connection with Katie, and it's just not shown yet. And I don't know if it's because the producers are trying to keep him intentionally hidden, or if it's just because it's not there, and that's not where this season is eventually taking us. Like I said, I'm also fairly certain that Justin is going to have a one-on-one date in episode 6, so that will all change. When you get a one-on-one date, everyone seems to get a complex personality edit. When you have a one-on-one date, just because you have the time and the visibility to make your personality be shown a little bit more, which I am excited about. I want to get to know more about Justin. He seems cool, but he's been so hidden. And then, is that 4 or maybe 5? The last thing that I think this trailer has blown up is the bombshell of Connor leaving the show and the fallout from all of that, which I think is going to be very dramatic and I think is also going to take place in episode 6. So I think next week is going to be another 2 one-on-one date, 1 group date kind of situation, where I think it's going to be Connor and Justin getting the one-on-one dates, and then the remaining 10 men going on the group date. So, anyways, that's my predictions. That's what I think. We shall see as we move forward. I don't know what was up with that accent, but anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more trailer breakdown and prediction, sleuthing, media analysis type videos, let me know. Thumbs up, that would be awesome. And if you haven't yet subscribed, what are you doing? What are you doing? I want your final rose. If you want to give me, I will accept. That doesn't make any sense. And if you have not yet subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future Bachelorette videos. Love Island USA just started last night, so I'm really excited. We're going to talk about some of that. Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff going. So hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.